the knowledge of good and evil is totally ridiculous. You know, people have proposed that it was an apple. People have proposed that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was opium, and it was maybe a fig or something like that. All kind of things. It was a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What we are proposing is that Kanehbosem, or cannabis, sweet calamus, sweet incense, or incense as it's mentioned in the Bible, the King James version of the Bible, but in the Hebraic Masoretic text you will find that Kanehbosem is found in the text, subtext, but it's translated as sweet calamus and sweet incense, and a special incense that Moses was commanded to make. Now, what these people who would claim that even proposing such an idea, cannabis is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you understand, is ridiculous, fail to see that this cannabis, being the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is not a statement of condemnation. That's the first point. It's not a statement of condemnation. Rather, it's a statement of responsibility. Yes, the tree was forbidden way back then. It was forbidden then. No, it now is not. This is what you have to recognize. It now is not. Because even the Bible teaches us that the Moshiach's or Christos's sacrifices, it absolves the corresponding chatiyat or sin of consuming it now, in and through Christ. This is the very central key point. Christ involved with the consuming, the taking, the using, the receiving of Kanehbosem. Now, that is basically the whole miracle of it, that the very existence of the tree in our world now represents the meshwa'it, represents the sacrifice which saves us, I, from the chatiyat, the missing of the mark of consuming it. Therefore, now its use is allowed in and through the Moshiach, in and through Christ. And we're emphasizing that, not Johannes, the virtual composer, but he does touch on that furthermore in his research report and in his article. Now, this is a quite subtle point, but it's often missed by most listeners who only dwell on the so-called forbidden nature of it, of past times. You hear a lot about how it's forbidden in the past, so forth and so on. And we're going to touch more on that later. Just a little point aside, but related to this. Did you hear about that? I think it's some 5,000, 2,000, between 2,000 to 3,000 year old marijuana that was found in some ancient Chinese grave. They had this thing about marijuana, like 3,000 year old weed or something like that. Maybe it was older than that herb, cannabis, that was found. Anyway, let's move forward with this. Cannabis, Kanehbosem, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Question. Let's put it out like a question. You understand? Let's question this and let's investigate this. So in this series, we're going to question, investigate, use generously Johannes, the virtual composer, his research, with also what we've had rested with Yahweh and through the Moshiach regarding this particular issue, touching on the Metaf Kedus and the revelation of the King of Kings in and through the Christ. Now, first of all, the word God, quote, end quote, will always be used loosely in this particular blog, vlog, in this particular teaching, you understand, based even on the article, as the author also uses the word God loosely. Now, why do we say that? Well, we say we're going to use the word God loosely, and our rationale and reasoning is based on the same basic principle of the author of the original article, but it's a little bit different. Now, how is it a little bit different? Well, based on our study, God, or Elohim, we'll say Elohim, but let's say God. When you see God in the King James Bible and you go and you study the Masoretic, Sometime you will find one word, sometime you'll find another construction of the word, and some will tell you, well, it's all the same thing. It's not all the same thing. You have to understand that in any language, you understand, where they're speaking their own language, they're very specific. There's nuances that you have to comprehend, that you have to at least understand before you get a good standing on it, before you can truly say you overstand it. So we're going to use the word God loosely in this context, because even in the King James concept of God, you may think God always mean Elohim, but then you study the text, in some places God may mean Yahweh, you understand? Or in some cases it may mean El Elyon, and they may not always translate it properly, you understand? Now the listener can take this to mean, in this context, in this study, as the system of things. Some may also take this as being Mother Nature. Others may take this as being the universe. Some may take it as being the universal mind. Others may take this as being the matrix's grand architect. And we want to note that the word matrix is found in the King James Bible, and basically it's translated to mean womb, the womb. All that openeth the matrix is Kedus, is holy, is HaKodesh to Yahweh, to the Yod He Waw He, the I am that I am, or He is who He is. So the matrix's grand architect, or for this purpose, whatever one likes or is able to conceive, or not even conceive, you can't conceive of the true deity, the Godhead. The deity Godhead has conceived of you, but you can perceive what you may perceive God to be. You understand? As we go forward, we'll try to clarify and specify according to revelation, you understand, what we know it to be. So that may clarify it for especially the Amharic and disciples. And the phrase the Christ, it refers to the mind's consciousness of the Kanehbosem experience as a heightened awareness in and through the word and the teaching of HaMashiach, of the Moshiach. Now, whether you believe, accept the physical existence of Yenazaretu Jesus is immaterial to the interpretation, you understand, of this particular article and this particular teaching, and I in general, whether you accept. Some people say, well, yes, Christmas, the mythology. Some say, no, he actually lived. We're not discussing that at this point. The author is using the Christ to denote the firstborn of God, and this is in perfect keeping and context with the scripture. The Christ, the Christos, is to denote the firstborn of many brethren, the firstborn of Ha-Elohim, in est, i.e., the first and the oldest consciousness, and let's say sustainable consciousness in existence. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil as an allegory for Kanehbosem, as an allegory for cannabis. Kanehbosem is the plant that, quote, God, Elohim, in the Hebraic sense, warned humanity, or the first humans, as ones would teach and preach it, not to eat from in the Geneta Eden, in the Garden of Delight, in the Garden of Eden. According to Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 to 17, and the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of Melkam and Kufu, of good and evil. For when you eat of it, you will surely die. Now, why this analogy? Why this analogy? What does this analogy teach us? Why is Kanehbosem the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and not the tree of life? Lemisale, for example. Well, God himself declares after the fall in Genesis